Alright guys, back again. Today we'll be doing a video about, I'll be doing a video about bullet holes and essentially bullet force. Since we're using a ray object for our bullet tracking and stuff like that, we are going to have to add like bullet force to objects that we want to, get hit by bullets and, move around and that sort of thing. So, what we have here is I've continued to copy this stuff over from the other FPS template that has these things, and doing, maybe a little bit of tweaking, it depends. So what I have right now is I have my debugging set on, so I created something called laser.py, which essentially shows me kind of what I'm looking at. So if I point it at the ground here, there's a small red laser that kind of shoots out there. That shows me that when I shoot it, it's going to put a bullet hole in the ground there, and that, bam. And if I go over a crate, something that has a crate property, these are all just variables that are set. This has like I think it's floor I have. So anything that has a floor property has a bullet hole that'll go on it for 700 seconds or 700 ticks, logic ticks. I'm not exactly sure how that, it wouldn't be 700 seconds, but then I think it's 60 ticks per second. But anyway, then there is, when the laser is green, that's when I'm pointed at a crate, something that will take force. So these are static objects, they're not going to take force. These are rigid body objects. So when I hit that, it's going to go ahead, and you'll notice also it spawned a spark right there. That kind of, it'll look cool when you're hitting stuff around in the game. I have one little bug I'm trying to work out on that for some reason that's not working correctly. But and as you can see, works just fine. This does not have this is still rigid body, but it does not have property crate, so I can't shoot it. Nothing happens. And there you go. That those two crates will also react to force. So I'll show you how to copy that over from the other template, and well, I'll show you how to set it up at least in this one. And all right, that's pretty much what we'll be covering today. All right. Start with bullet-hole.py. I haven't commented this one yet, but it's fairly simple. Actually, let's go ahead and start with the logic. First, what I did is I added this small little, on the other FPS template they had this as a crosshair, but mine game is not going to have a crosshair. After a lot of deliberation, I decided to parent it to the actual shotgun mesh. Because when you sight in and stuff, your shotgun is going to move, the position is going to move, so your laser is kind of where you want your laser to move as well, so, or your ray I should say. And we might have been better doing this by parenting it to the camera and then animating it as well, the iron sight in and out, but well, maybe that's what we'll do later, I don't know. Obviously we have some issues. If you look in here, well, we have issues with the actual laser being just a little bit off, because you'll see when you move left and right, kinda, but it does end up in the right spot, it just looks incorrect. So, but when you use iron sight in and out, it zooms in nicely, so. Alright, so if we go back, I created this and it's just called aim bullet, and then added a few sensors. Mouse, fire button, left mouse button. Fairly simple. And I'm piped that to bullet hole and bullet force.py. And bullet hole goes to edit object, add bullet. And the object is bullet hole, we add for 700 ticks. So we'll cover that in a second. Up here is fairly simple. Our sensors, mouse click, and ray. So, so our fire and ray bullet right there. These two things are going to our bullet hole.py. Spawn equals actuators add bullet. That's our spawn, and that is part of a bullet spawn. And the reason you want a bullet spawn object, that is, as I'll show you, outside of your level. This is our bullet spawn object right here. The reason you want something that is outside of your level is because when you spawn something, if it comes out right at the end of the gun, it like pauses for a second before it's moved, which you don't want. You just want it to, since we're using a ray sensor, you just want it to appear at the actual target. You don't want, especially for your bullet hole, you just want it to appear where you hit. You don't want it to start there and then appear, elsewhere. All right. So if we're hitting fire and our ray is positive, and our ray, if we look, it's going to be ray bullet right here, and anything that has a property of floor within 50 blender units means it's positive. So fairly simple. The vector ray hit position and vector ray hit normal, that just gets to normal and hit position. We're going to spawn instant add object. So we're going to add object bullet hole equals spawn object last created. And that just means that this is it created bullet hole. That means that's the object last created. We have to do it that way because bullet hole is on layer 2, so we can't use it getting like the get the scene Python method. So alright, so it's when it does spawn, it's doing add bullet right there, and it's spawning instant add object right there, and that's bullet hole equals spawn object last created. Now you're taking the bullet hole and you're aligning the axis to vector, I guess. This part I'm pretty sketchy on. This is just copy and pasted from the FPS template. The world position is just the positive vector plus normal vector dot xyz. So I didn't really make any changes to this. This works, fairly well straight out of the gate. So nothing much to do there. Let's go on to our bullet force dot py. This one I got a little bit further in detail with. Alright, let's... I do want to rewrite this because I have a small bug that doesn't appear to be in the other one for some reason. So, alright, all this is pretty much the same. This is a slightly different thing I haven't seen before, but works fairly well. GameLogic.get current scene, which is fairly obvious. .objects FPS.cam. Well, I changed it. It was camera 0, and that's pretty cool because you just go FPS.cam and just grab that object and save that as camo. And so, all right, this is the fairly obvious stuff: fire, ray all, and add force. So, force object, it uses the same thing we looked at just a little bit ago. The add force dot object last created. So essentially, add force is the add force actuator that is adding force behind it. And if we click on here, we can take a look at the things here. Let's go to our bullet force has fire and ray all. So once again, if our ray all is positive, then that means that we are hitting something with the property of crate within 50 blender units. So when that happens, and we hit the left mouse button, so that's our apply force right here, which I don't think we need. It's gonna all go into this. I think that's just a fancy way of doing it. So if we're our ray is hitting a crate and we're hitting the fire button, it will apply the force by activating add force right here, which just adds an object B force. And if we take a look at it, let's do that actually right now. Let's go to our second layer and take a look at actually two things. One thing is our bullet hole. There's a bullet hole, and it has an always sensor because once you add it, it's always gonna add a bullet hole. That's all it's gonna do. Since it's not in the first scene, it's not gonna activate until you actually add the object. So Once you add the object, it's going to add these little dust things right here, and they have simple motion. They move a little bit, so when the bullet hole fires, you see these quickly fire after it. And just add them for 15 seconds each, so not a big deal. That's just your bullet hole objects, nothing too fancy. Next, let us go over to, there we go. I gotta reorganize these a little better. This right here is our B-force object. If we go to our physics tab, we can just see it's a rigid body, collision bonds of convex hull, small margin. Nothing too fancy there. I actually don't think it matters because it is an empty. That's all it is. So, and here what we have here. So this part is for the spark, so we'll ignore that for now. Always. And it's going to do a simple motion of negative 2.50 blender units. So it's going to just add some velocity to this empty object, and these collision bonds, when they hit something, it's going to give it that much velocity if it's a dynamic object. So if we really wanted it to move, like if we wanted a powerful shotgun that's just going to blow away these crates, we could change that to negative like 2050. And then when we would go back, it would really blow away. But this is the other thing. We have a collision sensor. When we collide with something property crate again, it's going to add the spark for just two logic ticks, and that's all that is it's an alpha texture that just has a small spark, nothing too fancy. Use your alpha, all that. Alright, so if we go back to our camera, that small change we made, now that's really going to send those things flying. Like when you hit them, they're really going to go. So that's pretty much all your bullet force thing does. So if we go back to this here and pull up in our code. Alright, so as we were just saying, if we hit the left mouse button and the ray is centered on something that has the property of crate right there, it's going to change our own force to 1, change our force to on. This right here is skipped over. It does not happen until this loop here goes. So it'll loop through it, it'll get to there, it'll skip over that until that activates, and then that'll change the force to 1, and then it'll automatically go into this if rail is positive, which it will be. So it'll turn it off again, and it'll make a hit position, like where is the ray hitting? It is the ray all dot hit position. Fairly simple. Now our force object, which should be our B force, which we added for a time of 10 logic ticks, because it was added right here. This is when it was added, and so by the time it pops down the end of the script and comes back around, this still should be the last object created. However, the issue I'm having is sometimes, and if I turn this time up a little bit, it probably wouldn't be an issue. I think at least. Sometimes when it bops around the end here, by the time it gets here, this object the time has expired, so the object last created equals null. However, our own force in rail positive is still going, so it bops in here and hits an error, which is why I have to do own force for now. I'm doing own force equals 0 at the very top, so it'll trip there, and it'll go through there, but it'll error out on these things, but it'll keep going, and that means that one time when you hit the fire button, that crate is not going to go. So, but that's not a big deal, and I can probably rewrite it or just change the time. Oh, we'll see. Alright, so now we're taking our force object, which again is our B force. That's our small invisible box, pretty much, equals camo.world orientation. So that means that whatever way that the camera is facing, which this is great, so whatever way you're looking, that's where the force is going to be applied in a negative direction because it's going away from you. So then we're taking the local position equals the hit position. So since this is on the bullet spawn right here, it's a bullet spawn, it's going to spawn outside of our level, but we're going to make the position of it automatically change to the hit location right here, because hit position right here is going to be our local position all of a sudden. Bam. So it's going to jump, like teleport to that exact location. So I tried it with world position too. That shouldn't make a difference. I'm not sure why they have local position versus world position, but either way it seems to work. So that's pretty much it. I mean, that's just our bullet force and our bullet hole script part of it. It was essentially just copied over. I just added the objects over from the other template and did a little bit of tweaking, and it was good to go. And the laser one is obviously just for your own testing. It's helpful to see, everything that's being drawn in. So now obviously you notice that I don't have any fire animations or anything like that. It just fires. That's definitely what I'm gonna be working on next, I think. And boy, I'm not sure exactly what's going to be after that. I think I'm going to be working on a heads-up display after that. And once we get that finished, probably an inventory system or weapon switching, stuff like that is where we'll be covering next. But things are going to slow down a little bit since there's going to be a lot more Python for me to learn and a lot more unfortunately tricky things to figure out. But I'll still keep them coming.